something, especially because we have that nice grass area that they could do events on. Because,
We'd have to change the permit for that, because right now, when you rent the house, you get the house, you don't get the grounds. We don't have a fee for including the
right,
grounds.
but I mean, it's attractive to
Sure.
businesses,
Yep.
like in the like right now,
Yep.
no one's there. So they could
Yep.
put cornhole outside, you know what I mean? There's space when it's not in the summertime. There's space to do other things. So I do think it's a very attractive property, obviously, but I'm happy that we're gonna increase it incrementally instead of a big, jump. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on user fees? Councilor Norris.
Sorry to ask.
It's okay.
Do we know how much it costs for a year to run, operate, maintain the Zaberski House? Do we know how much it costs per hour when a group rents the facility? Is it costing us $10 and there is a gain of 20? Because I'm trying to get an understanding of, because I'm not quite sure going up $10 is really enough.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, and again, I'm
Right.
new, so excuse me, because I'm trying to understand who pays for the utilities, the cost of utilities that is going up, the cost of maintenance that is going up, the cost of, I don't know who opens the building, who closed the building. So while costs may be going up anywhere from 7 to 13%, how, if we only go up less than 10%, are we covering our expenses?
So I don't have it broken down by facility at the beach. I have it, I mean, our utility bills alone for which includes the gatehouse, the Zaberski House, and the Tyler House, of which the gatehouse and the Tyler House don't have water in them off-season, or the gatehouse doesn't have water in it at all. But we have a budget of $13,800 just for utilities, for the property as a whole. I could look and break that down and get it to you, what the house itself is, but, and then we also have a building monitor that's $18 an hour. So it comes and opens and closes the building, so that varies depending on how long somebody rents it.
So here's an odd question. So if someone rents the Zaberski House for 2 hours, right off the bat, it's costing us $36 to
Correct.
open and close.
Correct.
So again, I mean, I'm gonna vote yes, but I'm just like, do we really think what it costs to really operate that building? Where does the revenue go? Or I'm fine with, we say, hey, you know what? We don't need to worry about or manage revenue because we have tax dollars that supports this. So I just want to make that distinction where people are asking those questions, and I'm sure you are. We're just not privy to those conversations, which is fine. But so I'm rambling. Okay, pass on.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Depot.
I just want to clarify, it's my understanding that the goal of the parks, the beach and parks fees is to recover there's a range of 25 to 50% of the cost to operate the beach and parks department. Is that correct?
It depends. So our fees for any of our youth programs is up to 25% recovery. And any of adult programs, and if that's just recreational, we cover 100%. For facilities, it's usually 25 to 50%. So that's the beach as a whole, that we look at that percentage. We haven't broken it down per facility on the park, because, the beach is considered a park. So we haven't broken down what the cost to just run the Zaberski House is. I could do that and see what we're recovering, and whether that falls under the guidelines of the 25 to 50% recovery.
Deputy Mayor Depot.
Maybe that would be a good idea to, clarify that information, because that's more a budget question in general. So maybe when the budget is, presented, to say that, this is where our recovery rate is, or whatever, you know what I mean?
And right now, we're at just at 50%. A little bit, it's like 49.8% for the beach as a whole. what it costs us to operate the beach, including the Zaberski House and all the, because it's a year-round facility. We bring in about, 49.8% recovery of what it costs us to operate the facility year-round.
So one of the discussions that we had when I first got here was how much of the fees should cover the overall expenses of Parks and Rec, right? Should it be 100% self-sustainable, or does it fall as one of those things that the municipality has that gives back to the residents? So it's a hybrid, it's kind of in the middle of there. I have pushed and we have gone more toward trying to make it more profitable. I don't think that we're ever gonna get it to where it's 100%, considering the overhead and then the time that you have for staff that are mowing other parks and everything else. For example, the park itself pretty much is free. There are programs that are not. But when you get into the rental of the Z House and things like that, that is something that we should look closer at and see where we are on that. So that's a good question. Go ahead, Councilor Morris.
If I would make a suggestion that, if possible, through NRPA, National Parks and Recreation, we do some type of benchmarking on what they consider should be a standard. Mary Hill, or Director Hill is correct, a national standard for recovery in program fees is generally around 25%. But I believe there's a different standard when it comes to facilities. I'm just making that suggestion.
Sure. Any other questions or comments on user fees? If not, I'll take a motion to move this to mayor and council meeting of 7 February.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry,
Just,
Councilor?
didn't you say there were two changes
Just
and
the
this
one.
was one?
Just the one, there's,
The only change to the rules whatsoever?
no, the only change to user fees was the Z House.
Are we only doing the user fee or the rules?
We're doing the
They're
user
next.
fee, and once I get a motion to move that, then we're gonna go
Okay, thank you.
to the next one. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay, now we're gonna talk about Eastern Point Beach property. These are the rules and regulations.
Yes.
Mary?
So, very minimal changes again this, for this year on this. On page 1 under hours, we had a lengthy discussion about the lifeguards. We have everybody else on staff there to 8, but last year, because of the shortage we had for lifeguards, it was very hard to keep lifeguards on staff to 8, so we moved it to 6 for this year. If we see an influx and we have the number of lifeguards, we'll keep them there to 8 o'clock also, but I didn't want to get tied into that 8 o'clock timeframe for lifeguards on duty, where right now, the 7 guards that I had last year, none of them indicated they're coming back. So we're kind of, we're struggling with that particular position at the beach. So I just the committee decided that we'd put that at 6. If we get enough guards, we'll move that back to 8 with the rest of the supervisors and everybody else that's there to 8 o'clock. Under vehicles, we added golf carts. We have, so golf carts aren't technically allowed on city streets except up by the golf course. But we do have a few residents that do show up on their golf carts down Beach Pond Road and into, so we made them a prohibited vehicle. In the past, we had it in our rules, and I'll show you where, as we get there, where an unregistered motorized vehicle wasn't allowed. We changed that last year or the year before, but that kind of eliminated anybody who has like a moped or a scooter, which is an unregistered motorized vehicle, that couldn't get in, and so that's gonna be moved and treated like a bike, but I'll show you where that's gonna be later in the rules. So we just added that, so we have our coverage on that. On page 3, under walk-ins with the guest pass, we added the guest pass a number of years ago for the individuals that live within walking distance of Eastern Point Beach, or they have multiple members of a family own the house, and it's in one person's name, but it's in their sister's name, but their brother comes and they can't use it because he doesn't have anything that has his name on it, so we have a guest pass. And we're getting into some issues where it's only for 4 people, but it's for adults, and any kids can walk in free, because that's what the rules are. So we kind of want to delineate, we just added the word adult under the guest pass for adults, so that way we don't have issues anymore with them. They counting their kids, and I'm like, oh, I got 8 people, but, 6 of them are kids, so the rest, y'all can get in. So we just wanted to clarify that. Under parking, we just added the word all registered motorized vehicles, because that's what we cover on B. So, let's see, page 4, rule number 13. We eliminated the use of those 10 by 10 metal pop-ups last year, just due to the fact that they take up a lot of space. There's a lot of metal if they get caught by the wind. We did have quite a bit of, I won't say pushback, but there were some concerns with families that have children, and especially younger children. So we've put it back in. It has to be behind the guard stands, up against the wall area, and the lifeguards and the staff will monitor the locations. If it's not a busy day, it's not a windy day, it might be some flexibility there, but we just wanted to bring that back because we did have some concerns with some of our families with smaller kids. Page 5, this is where, on number 24, where we have, where there's no bike ride, the bikes can't ride on the property, but they can come into the property. This is where we added the other motorized recreational vehicles, a scooter, mopeds. We were back and forth about adding e-bikes, but a bicycle's a bicycle. We're gonna stay for right now. If it becomes an issue moving forward, we'll add that. And number 26, we've had many a complaint about people and their music, so they just wanted to reference rule number 2, where profanity, obscenities, and vulgarity are not allowed, so to try to keep their music in line with that. I believe that's it for this year.
Any questions or comments on the rules? Deputy Mayor Depot.
I just wanted to comment, when I read this, I was very happy to see, actually, I didn't think about the radio boombox rule, kind of referring back to Rule 2, and I know that we've had a couple complaints, so it's just nice to have another mechanism. You should be able to say to a person, this is unpleasant for people, can you turn it down? But it's nice for them to be able to say, this is against the rules, so we can remove you from the beach. So I think that's really good. I think the lifeguard thing, that's such a good solution, because if people aren't expecting the lifeguards to be there, they won't be so disappointed. Because I think that was a lot of the problem last year, is people were expecting lifeguards, and there was nothing we could do,
Right.
there's nothing you could do about the shortage.
Right.
So it was really tough to try to explain that to people, and they were really unhappy. So I think that that's a great solution, is set the expectation at 6 o'clock, which is a reasonable hour to have lifeguards until, and most people with kids are gone by that time, which is the main concern. So I think that's a great solution. So thanks.
Well, and depending on the number of applicants that we get, we may end up modifying hours or saying, not closing the beach, but saying that there are no lifeguards on duty.
Which we kind of did last year.
Yep.
The guards chairs all have no lifeguard on duty signs on them right now in the off-season, and they're quite easy to put on and take off. So we always had the one off on Main Beach, but middle and far, some days those signs were up there just to cover ourselves, and then if we couldn't, we also had sandwich boards if we had to put those out in case we didn't get one back up on a chair after taking it off, like on a Saturday or Sunday, because it's a little busier those days, so.
Okay, any other, Councilor Sheffield?
Mary, have you considered, as far as motorized vehicles and scooters, for a fee for them to come onto the beach?
We haven't, because the way we do our beach pass is by registration. To get the pass, we put the license plate number on it, and they don't have one. And then we let people drive their bikes in, residents can ride their bikes in and put it in the bike rack at no charge. So it hasn't been discussed. I mean, it is something that we could look at over the year, this company, for next year if you want us to. I just would have to figure out how we would do that.
Any other, Councilor Norris?
If I may have a request. So as I was reading this on Sunday, I didn't know what the changes were. So,
They're not,
Yours
they're
is
not
not in red?
highlighted in your packet?
no, I didn't have
In
any
red?
other,
Some of them are in red. One of the pages, the red is gray.
mine were all black. So, maybe I just got a copy of
Well, I
the,
think I think you did,
I got a
because
dud copy. That's
one
okay.
of the things
Ours
that
were in red.
that I said was to make sure that we do this and track changes so that the red so that the color difference shows up so that the counselors can identify what the changes are.
Un-
So I apologize if you didn't get that.
No, no, not at all. Okay. Unfortunately, the only thing that turned red on mine was the date on the top. It said 2022, but that's fine. But I do have some questions, if you don't mind. So, Director Hill, we know, because we're in the profession, the lifeguard situation is not going to change. So I'm wondering, is there, if you do get more applications this year, instead of saying, okay, we may go to 7 PM, is there times of day where the number of people that are at the beach would warrant, in your professional view, I really wish we had that extra guard during that time, and we could shift that person from saying we're gonna be open till 7 to, no, we are crazy busy between 2 and 4:30, and put that guard there. So that's one thing to think about. As well as, we know there is a standard between lifeguards and the number of people that should be at a facility. So even if you have more guards, does that ratio between beach people and guards even warrant having till 7 PM? And I bring this all up because one thing we do know about human nature is consistency. So if I'm making this up, last year we closed at 6, this year we're gonna close at 7, next year we're gonna close at 6, that it kind of hits people that we're not being consistent, and we're kind of just based on the number of people that we have. So that was a thought process that I was going through. And the last thing about that is, with the beach, with people coming in with the pass, so to speak, so do we have, so the person that's in the gate building, are they also constantly having to see if people are walking up by the fence, if they're coming by the left? So they're really being more than a gate attendant, they're really being security at the same time.
Okay.
I know I threw a lot.
Nope, but I wrote it all down. So let's start where you ended. So we don't call them gate attendants, they're beach attendants.
Sorry.
So they actually attend to what's coming in and out of the beach.
Okay.
They'll refer to themselves as gate attendants, but their job description is actually a beach attendant. And yes, they do have to monitor, but we do have signage up to have people who are walking in to make sure they walk over and check in at the gate. That's why it's open on both sides.
Okay.
So we do that. Our hours have consistently been, for the last 6 years, 8 to 8.
Okay.
With the fact that we charge to 8, there was discussion in the past about having staff there, till 8. So the set hours are 8 to 8. Whether or not we have full coverage of staff at that time depends on what we get. Lifeguards do a stagger start. I mean, we usually have at 8, it's usually 2 come in, and then 10, 2 more come in, so we have 4. And then at noon, we'd have another 2.
Okay.
So potentially at noon, we could have 6 or even 8, depending on the, weekends are busier than Monday through Friday. Thursdays used to be a crazy day because we used to bring the summer playground group down all at once, and we used to have our 200-plus kids at the beach, but now we do that every day. We bring them down daily, so it's not as influx of our program taking over the whole one half of the beach. So that would help with the, when we would need guards in regards to keeping them and
Okay.
keeping the beach. We don't technically staff our beach based on the number of people we have come in because that fluctuates.
Right.
That fluctuates. We're upwards some years, on a nice, a couple of years, 4th of July, we had 1,500 people come to the beach. But then on a rainy day, we might have 2. But we still keep our guards on duty on a rainy day, just in case it clears, or people do come down. So I hope, does that help?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll take a motion to move this to mayor and council meeting of 7 February.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mary.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, number 3, we're gonna go to Groton Utilities, change orders 23 through 29, and then Wright Pierce, and then SCADA.
So, change orders 23 through 29. This is actually the last change order for the filtration plant project, or that you will see. This culmination of change orders, we're actually asking for a special meeting tonight to get it done so that we can go right to closing, which will be accumulating all the contracts and the change orders and everything by about the end of the month. And Ron Uhas and bond counsel are actually putting together the details now, and that's it. So attached are the details of what the change orders entail. They address some issues with HVAC and air conditioning in the building, in different parts of the building, and a myriad of other little things as cleanup. Also attached is the contingency summary sheet, and you can see in red, and then onto the second page, the addition of the change order 23 through 29, leaving a final contingency on this at about $114,000. And there is a little bit of other contingency in other parts of the contract to pay for attorney fees and a few other things, but this portion of the project came in just under budget. And those who have been here for a good portion of the 5 years know what we've been through with some of the larger change orders, especially as it relates to PCBs. We are trying to plan, and it may be a month or 2 or 3 in coming, a closeout presentation by Stantec, possibly by Stantec, to put this whole thing together and benchmark the project and do a lessons learned, because this has been a long road. But with that, I'll just ask if there's questions.
Councilor Sheffield?
Okay, so Ron, this is it, was what you're saying, these last change orders, and the project will be final? That's it?
The goal is to take so it's a $54 million project. It had a grant of, on the order of magnitude of 15 million, right? So we've got, the remainder is basically a 2% government-backed loan, similar to a bond, but it's a loan. And we need to close that just like you would close the finances on your, a closing for your house. So the state's involved, we're involved, and this is fairly complicated, so a special bond attorney gets involved.
So the expenditures are now completed, as far as what you need for the project? Does there need to be additional money in the future for this, or is this?
There, to do the scope that was completed, there will be no additional spending. Some of there's a document that's going to be created that makes sure that we tie all the loose ends together and make sure it's going to define exactly what scope and who's responsible for the last of the few things that are ongoing. But these are the final costs. This is all the money that will be putting out and authorizing to be spent. So at closing, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll be getting a check and we'll be dispersing as the final invoices come in.
Correct. So the way that this, through the whole process, how it's worked is all of the invoices come through, they get approved through Stantec, through operations, everybody approves it. then they get sent to the state for their approval. And then the state wires us money to reimburse us for those invoices, and then we in turn pay those out. So what this is gonna do is, it's gonna get that last transfer from the state into our bank account. And then that'll allow us to pay, as like Ron was saying, as these things are finalized out, to pay them out, and then we will hold a contingency in that account until that period of time is satisfied, which is normally 1 year after completion.
So that, the last projects are gonna be done. The money gets shut off in February. Now, there are a couple projects, HVAC specifically, that we know that the end date is gonna be after the termination date for DPH. And that's why I said we wanna have this document that basically comes down and says, this organization is responsible for this, and this. Here's how much money, and if they have any growth, they eat that, right? Because there's no more money. Once we close this out, that's it. So all the punch list items that are typically associated with or any project, but large projects like this are gonna be included. Some of them you can see here. And then the HVAC is broken down, actually it's broken down into two sections, I think. One for the electrical switchgear and one for the operations of it. And then there are other projects that are gonna be closed out, so it will be clearly delineated who is responsible, even if the end date is beyond the closeout date of the package, of the final package from DPH. We've already assured that there will not be any additional money, and there will not be any additional growth in that project, and if there is, then they have to eat that. That's accurate, right?
100%.
Okay. Did that kind of help
And
answer
then-
your question?
Yeah, and
ahead.
then the remaining left is 114,154.70. What does that now, as far as leftover, what happens with that money of the balance?
So that will be used towards, like Ron said, the bond council, the fees for the closing, with the state, with the loan. Potentially, it could be used to accrue some interest, which I don't think there's gonna be enough to wrap the interest that we've already accrued in this project from the time we started drawing down. But they allow you, if there's money remaining, to capitalize it and amortize it over the life of the loan, which it won't. But if we don't end up spending it, and we'll just say we have no other costs that are gonna come out of it, it just reduces the loan amount. So we wouldn't have the full $39 million loan, it'll be 38,896 or 86. So it just doesn't, it would be money that we wouldn't have received, so we don't owe it back, essentially.
So I want to what's important to me for now is that we go through these at whatever depth the council needs to be comfortable, because later tonight, we're having a special council meeting in order to approve 23 through 29. And then after this meeting, I was gonna let both directors go, but if you need them, that's why I want to try to get the questions that you may have regarding this now. So, do you want to go through these in more depth? Or, Ron, how do you want to do it? Because you basically just said, here they are, they're 23 through 29.
Right. Other than the HVAC, the only other thing that is in here that might notice is a few project delay charges that were added in due to some of the eel delays and a few other delays that RH White was asking for. I do want to say that RH White really did a great job on the project, and in the end, with COVID mixed in and multiple other things mixed in, I would say that profit margins might be non-existent at this point, or actually are non-existent at this point. They spent a lot more time here than they expected to, but some of that was for reasons of just that we couldn't avoid.
So, I realize we're not there yet, but if you go to page 4 of the mayor and council agenda, there's a short summation of each of the change orders. It says 23 is for additional smoke detectors, generator service, heat exchanger investigation, pilot testing for the manganese conditioning contactor disinfection, interior door modifications, boiler emergency stops, interior door replacement, chemical flow transmitters, and additional siding for the amount not to exceed. And then 24 is for eel screens, 25 is for generator isolation valves and startup delay, 20, that's 25. 26 is for the DAF environmental improvements. 27 is supplemental HVAC in the administrative areas. 28, supplemental HVAC in the main electrical room. And change order 29 is for project delays for an amount not to exceed. And so that's basically the summation of change orders 23 through 29. Do you want additional information on those change orders? Deputy Mayor Depot?
I just wanted to say that the information that was included in our packet, I thought was, it's more detailed than that. And
It
it
is.
summarizes more specifics on each one, so I'm happy with that explanation. I thought that was good.
That's true. The backup material, we provided you the backup material to go into more detail, and then the agenda item for the mayor and council meeting is at a much higher level. Any other questions or comments on this? Then I'll take a motion to move this to tonight's special mayor and council meeting.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Okay, right, Pierce?
As you may be aware, the wastewater treatment facility is going through an engineering study to determine the substance of what'll be the next upgrade project for the wastewater treatment plant. Recently, we've been getting a lot of complaints from one of the neighbors on odors. So it was determined through the Utility Commission meeting and focusing that we should pull the odor control portion of the project out of the main project and move that forward as fast as possible. So what you see in front of you is the request for funding of the design of the odor control system, and it will probably replace the air scrubber that currently sucks. It creates a negative pressure on the building and sucks all the air out and then discharges that into the atmosphere. It's probably going to recommend replacing it with a charcoal scrubber system. And part of these systems, when you're making negative pressure in a building, is you have to have enough HVAC to heat and cool the building and allow enough fresh air to come in and make that happen. So it's actually quite detailed. So this is the engineering request that will create the request for purchase bid package to move forward with all that work.
Deputy Mayor Depot.
I just want to clarify, so this is coming out of money that we've been able to, out of the bond fund, right? Is that where it's coming from?
This is actually, it's marked there, it says bond fund, yes.
And I just want to say, this is part of the reason why we moved to the sewer fee, because otherwise we would have had to bond this or use money from the general fund, correct, for a project like this previously, when we had the sewer fee in the tax base instead?
Yeah.
In general, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Councilor Sheffield?
How long did it take, I guess, we know, neighbors, were upset with the odor, over the years, and we're hoping this now corrects the problem. It seems like it's been several years now that we never have been able to resolve it, and we're hoping this expenditure will finally take care of it. Is that, are we,
I'll answer a hopeful yes to that,
okay?
but there are times when complaints are made and we can't find the source or can't find an odor, and there's other times that there definitely is an odor.
So now
So-
we officially found the source now? Are we in that period to where we shouldn't have to make too many more corrections with this problem, or?
Well, we do need to remember that some of the tankage is open air and in aerated tanks. So there are odors that will come out of an uncovered facility no matter what happens. But the raw sewage smell that you generally smell should be coming from the inlet building where it comes all together and where they actually dry the sludge in that building also. So that first building there is where the majority of the odors should come from. The odors that are generated in the digesters should normally be burnt off on the flare or burnt off in the furnace. That is most of the odor-producing areas of the facility.
We will have a presentation in the next couple of months by Joe Pratt, the chief plant operator. We've wanted to bring him in earlier, but with COVID and other things, I've decided not to bring him in, but I do plan on bringing him in so that he could walk you through the different stages of the plant. He's got a great diagram that is very informative, so we'll be doing that here in the next couple of months. Any other questions on this item? Councilor McCabe.
So this amount, listed in here is for the design and specifications, which will then go out to bid, so there'll be an additional cost to actually design the system and install it, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. This is the design and bid package, and then the capital installation will follow this
Yep.
as this completes.
Okay. Councilor
Is
Sheffield?
there estimate on that project, that next piece as far as installing? What's the?
If there is, I don't know what it is.
Well, I think the answer to that is when they go in and do the design and on this, engineering and design, that might come out of this.
It definitely will. There'll be estimates that come out of this process, and no one told me or gave me a heads up on what the total might be on that at this point.
Right.
And it is a good question.
Any other questions or comments on this? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to move this to mayor and council meeting of 7 February.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. SCADA,
SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, which happens to be the operational control computers that operate the substations for the electrical distribution system. That system is over 10 years old at this point, and this is to move forward with replacing equipment and software to keep that system current.
any questions on SCADA system? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to move this to mayor and council meeting of 7 February.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Okay, thank you. All right, that's it for you, Director Gooding.
Are the utility commission meetings videotaped?
No,
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
and if you want to get recordings, we can, we'll hook you up with the right people if you want to listen to them.
Oh, no, what I was gonna add was, because I attended the last Groton Utilities Commission meeting, and it really opened my eyes and gives an awful lot of detail, so I want to thank the commission and your staff, because it really helped me understand what we're talking about tonight. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
I'll share that.
Okay? All right, thanks, Ron. All right, the next item is 690, city budget presentation. The first budget will be the highway budget. Bill? Just for a real quick introduction, tonight, we'll be talking about roads and highways, and we'll also be talking about police. In both cases, these are the department heads' first budgets that they presented to the council. They, both of these have to be approved by council, and then we send them to mayor and council of the town. I send them to John Burt, the town manager, and then he presents them to the council, and we go there and we talk to them, and, because that's how we get funded. We get funded 100% of roads and highways as required by the special act, and for the police, by tradition, we get funded 50% of the operational budget minus chief's salary. So on this budget, on the highway budget, you're gonna see a capital budget, and then you're gonna see an O&M, operation and maintenance budget. So I'll let you go through it any way that you wanna do it. And on the capital budget, we have a unique item this time, which is the Shore Avenue Seawall, which is part of our resiliency challenges that we have here. And it is an expensive item that we've broken out separately in the CIPs. So Bill, I'll let you
Sure.
take it from here.
Sure, thank you. So I'll start with the administration piece of this budget. And as you see here, the change is roughly $39,747. And with that comes, so most, for the lion's share of that is with salaries, so you'll see $6,800 there, and down through the administrative costs, insurances, et cetera, workers' comp, and down. That really takes up most of the increase that's in the admin piece.
So what you'll see is on the non-departmental costs, let me draw your attention because we'll be looking at that for all budgets. The retirement, health insurance, OPEB, workers' comp, those kind of things, those have went up. Ron, what would you say roughly the,
It's depending on the department. Currently, because these budgets are so early in the process, we have not received our full renewals yet for the health insurance and our regular general property liability. So for a placeholder for health, we used a 5% for both budgets, kind of based off of historical knowledge and kind of what we feel is reasonable without going too aggressive or not enough. And then the same with the general insurance, we kind of kept it right around there. That with conversations with the consultant, he feels when we look at our liability and the workers' comp and everything as a whole, that he thinks it's roughly probably a 5. However, we may see some areas come in at a 3, some come in at an 8, so we just kind of kept it just as a global.
right,
Unless we could see a change, then we adjusted accordingly. But that
Okay.
was kind of the placeholders for these budgets.
okay,
Because you'll see, when we get to the police, you're gonna see a huge increase in one of the lines. And
Got it.
we'll discuss that then.
okay, thank you, Ron. Deputy Mayor Depot? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I saw him.
I did, but I'm gonna save my question for.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
Bill, please continue.
Sure, so the next sheet is the fleet maintenance, and the change on that for this year is $5,938. The biggest piece with that truly is the $6,000, and that goes to fund tires, parts, et cetera. We've seen an increase in materials for that, and hence the budget was increased in that range to cover that piece, okay? And I'll just run through these if you wish, and then go back to questions, if that works.
Sure.
Okay. Third sheet is roads and streets. If you look at that piece, you'll see a significant increase. And the reason for that is, the big piece for that is with the stormwater testing part. So we're looking at purchasing City Works. So City Works, there's a big cost that goes along with that. Let me grab this right here quick. Okay, so City Works, the intent is to have that brought on board, and that too is going to be supporting our stormwater system, okay? The price for City Works is $86,622.75. Including in that, it's a one-time fee, including in that is it'll bring us it truly, it supports our MS4 permits. And in doing that, we're going to instill GIS mapping. And what that is tracking and locating all of our stormwaters, catch basins, outfall sampling locations, et cetera. So we'll be mapping that onto what is called Trimble. The Trimble we already own. That's a software program that we use. Groton Utilities uses it all the time. City Works is going to partner with the Trimble. They support Trimble. They're going to gather up all of the locations and map the GIS for us for all of the stormwater systems. Also in that will include the city boundaries, identify the outfalls and receiving locations so where those outfalls are dumping into the Thames, all of the pipes, culverts, anywhere that travels all of the stormwater system across the city. With that, we'll be able to, track any illicit discharges. So anything, the intent of a municipal stormwater system is to solely transfer stormwater to its drop off into the river, okay? So with this piece, it'll help us track any problems that we have with the system. Also included in that is an asset inventory piece. That is going to, so each piece of equipment that's out there in the field will then have an asset. We can track the history for it. We can track costs for any repairs or anything that goes along with any part of the system. It's going to include a computerized maintenance management system. So CityWorks is a computerized maintenance management system, okay? So what that comes, you can build your PMs into that. You can build your corrective work orders or any repairs into that. You can schedule all of your work through that piece. And it really is what's needed. Also in support will be the startup and then all of the training. So I have one engineer that manages the MS4 program. She and myself will be receiving training to operate it. The CMMS system increases regulatory compliance. So that part, we'll be able to, like I said, we'll be able to set up our PMs. So we're required to do so many stormwater samples at these outfalls each year. We'll be able to capture the dates, the history that go along with the samplings. If ever we get audited, we can pull that information out of CityWorks. I can schedule the year's PMs for them so that we're always compliant. We perform the work on time. We'll also be able to record the samplings that we do. We have 24 outfalls in the city. If we have any records that we need to retain, everything will be kept inside of that validated system. Okay? Now, this system is also being used, so the town also does GIS mapping. So we confirm with them. They are a little bit ahead of us already. Much of this information is already recorded into their program. They also have Trimble, and it's all in there. Okay?
Yeah, I think they expended for this either last year or the year before.
Yeah.
The state, so MS4 is municipal separate municipal separate storm sewer system.
Correct.
So our stormwater system with catch basins and those kind of things, there's been a requirement and there's more and more requirements every year from the state on tracking and sampling and knowing where, so that you can go to this specific catch basin and know where the outfall is and where it goes into what water basin and how they impact. And that's what this is gonna allow us to do in the future. This is a database program. So we have the Trimble so that we can map it, but then we have a database system that we can input all the data for all the sampling that is required by this, and then be able to pull it up, run diagnostics, run testing, run trend analysis, graphs, those kind of things that are starting to become more and more required by the state of Connecticut.
Correct.
Because it's all about trying to keep the waterways cleaner and to minimize point source and non-point source pollution into our waterways.
Right. That's correct. So it's a validated system, right? So all of the history, all of the work orders and everything will be recorded in there, okay? Again, we take care of all the 24 samplings that we dump, that we capture. It also includes, so, you know, you think about what goes into your catch basin. So a big part of keeping the material free from going in there is like the road sweeping. Even that is a part really of the MS4 permit. So you don't want, you know, salts and everything going down into the stormwater. So ultimately, that'll end up out in the Thames, right? So we'll actually be able to track all of that with the intent of sweeping each road twice in a city. So we can set a PM for that. You know, next month we'll hit these roads, capture it, record it. So if ever we're audited, we have all of that history, okay? And then also, you know, we'll capture anything, so any corrective work orders that need to be fixed, catch basin repairs, et cetera, we'll be able to have a true number, a cost associated with the MS4 permit.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so that's the big impact to the budget on roads and streets, and you'll see the cost for that City Works tied up into a $90,000 value, which is on contracted services for drainage. Okay. Next is snow and ice control, and the increase for that for this year is $6,250. So I can speak quickly to the overtime. You see a value there, $38,000 for this year. What we do is we look at the last 5 years. We throw out the high, we throw out the low, and we average the three, and that's how we forecast what we're going to need for support for that. Okay, and the rest are typical going down with nothing really outlying. The next sheet is engineering. And you'll see a change there of $6,552. So most of that is tied up with contracted services. So we have, you know, in support of the MS4 permit, we're going to be doing, you know, we purchased a new plotter. There's some maintenance fees that go along with that. And then we'll also be doing some maintenance and then, of course, a contract with that. So a service fee for that, every annual fee for that. Okay. The next sheet is highway buildings. The additional cost this year for that is $2,484. And if you look at the change column there, the $3,300, that the intent is to cover any increases that are electric or water for the building. Okay. Questions on the operations piece before we get into the capital?
That was Mayor Depot, and then Councilor Shepard.
So like on any of the ones we've just went through, right?
Yeah, we haven't went through CIPs yet. We will.
Okay. Because I'm gonna go back to,
Okay.
hold on.
Get us to a page or a line item. And we'll-
Oh, they're not numbered, my pages.
Okay.
Which section?
So it is roads and streets, I think. Yeah, roads and streets. So the, I have a couple questions. So you said the $86,626 is a one-time fee. Is there also going to be an annual maintenance fee after that?
Pardon me?
Is there also going to be an annual maintenance fee after that?
No, so we already own Trimble, which is a good thing. And then there will be an additional cost every year for the City Works, but that program is also going to be picked up and used by Groton Utilities. They have much work that they're going to be using the City Works piece for. Ron has told me that they're going to pick up the annual cost for that as a blanket.
So the utility company is gonna pay the annual cost?
Yeah.
Instead of-
It's a
okay.
one price, yeah.
And you said that the town already is using the GIS.
They've already performed the GIS mapping for the town.
Right, so does that mean that we'll be able to import their data to make our change easier?
So the intent, so I would hope that we would partner with them, and then we would just either get another layer on Trimble, and we would turn on or off that layer, and that's how they operate that. It's more like a layer, like AutoCAD, you can turn it on or off, and that's how that works. So we would be able to, yeah, we'll have the same design and format that the town has.
And so my last question on that is, how do we anticipate Or do we anticipate pushback from the town on this
As far as,
piece of the budget? Because this is gonna have to be approved by the town, because they pay for the roads and streets.
Right.
So,
yeah,
how do you anticipate that conversation going, rationalizing, using that when they already have GIS? I'm just thinking of like
yeah,
pushback that we might get from them, because obviously we need them to pass our budget.
yeah.
So how do you anticipate getting this cleared with them?
I believe they'll be receptive because, as I said, they already have it. And it really is as part of our MS4 permit. You know, you start off by identifying your outfalls, you know, and you continuously grow. The GIS mapping really is the next step that we're at. And I think they'll be very receptive to get us up to speed, you know, with that, for our permit.
Do you want me to ask all of my questions?
Well,
I only have two more.
okay, go ahead. And then I'll turn it over to Counselor Chapman.
Under snow and ice control,
Yep.
there's a small increase in your request for overtime, but there's a 40% increase in your request for meals and stipends. If we're not expecting a big increase in overtime, why would the increase for the meals and stipends be so large?
The meals piece went up in the union, so that fee, that annual, that piece.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the increase for that. I should have spoke to that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a union negotiated cost that increased.
Okay, and then my last question. Is there a particular reason we anticipate an increase in overtime for engineering?
So I added a little bit of cover in there because this year we have a full depth reclamation gonna be happening on Pequannock Road. And I wanna make sure that we really have boots on the ground for that. So it's a big, big project, and I added a little bit of coverage in there for our engineer, so Heidi's, to be down there.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay, Counselor Sheffield.
I guess my only concern would be the utilities fuel. Since oil prices are skyrocketing all of a sudden, will, 3,300 cover it through the winter season and so forth? Should that be enough, or do you anticipate possibly having a greater expenditure?
And Ron, did you want to touch that? or no?
We're already locked in. We lock in September of the previous year for next year. It's like almost like an 18-month pre-lock-in. So we're good for this year. Now, I'm not gonna say when we do our renewal with the consortium coming for the next year that we're not gonna see increases, but this year we did lock in at a relatively low price, so
Okay,
it should be fairly consistent.
okay.
Any, Counselor Norris?
Thank you, Your Honor. What percentage are you using for salary increases? Because I was trying to calculate that, and I was doing this between 2 and 2.5, so I was just wondering.
Want that, Ron, or you want me to?
So to kind of take a step back when we go with salaries, there's a total outside of the admin and the engineer, there are 15 positions in Public Works. So they're allocated between the sanitation and highway based on the time that they spend on certain things. So what we did, we revisited, we relooked at the allocation to make sure that it was in the correct bucket. So the determination was to keep full-time equivalents the same, which I believe it's around 10 in the highway budget. And what we used for that was the 2.25% increase, which goes with the contract. And we captured the step increases as well. So there may be a little bit different with step increases and such, but 2.25 was based off contract.
How does that compare to union folks?
That is the union.
That is, so
Yes.
everyone's going essentially 2.25?
And then I believe the non-union may have been like a 2.5
Got
or a
it.
3, just as a placeholder, doesn't mean that's what it's gonna.
Sure,
It's
sure,
just-
that's honest, man.
Yeah,
So, but that does pose the question, if you don't mind jumping ahead 3 months from now, is that going to be the approach for all salaries across the city?
Yeah, I'm looking at what I'm gonna do. So you have the negotiated salaries, And then I'm also looking at what I'm gonna do for, the non-union employees. And we had a meeting with them, and one of their concerns is that, well, we're getting the same thing that they are, because in the past, typically what we've done is said, okay, if it's 2.25 here, it's gonna be 2.25 here. The challenge is, the unions have steps and those kind of things, and the non-union doesn't have any steps. So I am looking at somewhere between 2.5% and 3%,
Okay.
for the but we haven't made that solid decision yet, and that will come when you get towards your budget.
Sure, thank you. If I may continue.
Please.
So with the occupational health safety, just a question is, so folks in the union, do they have, or what is the spending allowance that they may have by the union contract?
There, according to the contract, there are certain things, clothing, apparel,
Oh, yeah.
that we provide
Yep.
to them, and actually, we get it for them. We don't let them buy it. How do we do that, Ron?
You know, their clothing allowance, they get a stipend,
Okay,
and they're required to purchase clothing with the exception of the garage mechanic who receives uniforms.
And how much is that stipend?
I don't know that exact.
Okay.
450, I think.
I don't remember what it is in this, I
I
don't
think it
remember what we
changed the last
negotiated.
Right, the reason why I ask is
Yeah.
that, is that in this line, occupational health safety for 16,000, or is it somewhere else?
It's included in that.
It's included in that, all right.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll go with that. All right, thank you.
Well, there's also safety incentive, there's CDL physicals.
Yeah.
Safety incentive is if you work so many hours and with no injuries, then we have an award, a point system.
Yep.
And those points go towards things that you can purchase.
Oh, that's cool.
And then, but we have to buy those as the company. And there's a cost to that. And then CDL license, all our drivers have to have physicals and those kinds of things, and there's a cost to that as well. I'm not sure what else, but we also make sure that we provide, something that's really important to me is to make sure that we have the right PPE for all the employees. I want to make sure that, you know, after a career here and these guys retire, if they're sitting in a rocking chair, it's because they want to, not because they have to. So I want to make sure that we're providing them the right PPE.
Sure. If I may, I
Go ahead.
apologize, one last question. So, road patching. So, obviously, can you talk me through, like in a 15-second synopsis, how do you determine, is it a crew just drives around town, they see a pothole and they patch it? If a resident sees a pothole, who do they call?
So
Because you
that's-
do have this budgeted.
We do, so that's a great question. So, you know, a pothole or something comes up like that, I would consider that to be a corrective, right? So versus something that's planned and budgeted for. So we currently don't have a work order system. You know, we have a scratch piece of paper or an Excel file or something like that. Ideally, down the road, we work towards getting to use CityWorks for that same thing so that I can begin planning and scheduling the work, right? So I'm sending a truck out, you know, if I have a pothole to make a repair, you know, I make it safe, and then I identify 2 or 3 other ones, and, you know, I can kind of batch repairs, so one time out, you know, so the efficiency's there. So any corrective, you know, calls like that comes into the highway office, and we dispatch people to get a quick look at it. That's kind of the way we operate with that. And when we do a lot of those first-time repairs, not so often, not frequent, but we take care of them, so it's
Sure.
customer service.
But a citizen should call Public Works.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah, so, yeah. So we'll get somebody right out, make it safe, you know, for the traffic and for the individuals, and then we'll look at, you know, are there other ones that we need to batch?
Got it.
But again-
You can just get that number right off the website.
Absolutely, so, yeah.
We also do hot patch and cold patch for cracks, right? We
do.
go through and we just,
We just
in the
did,
fall,
so we just finished up North Road and then going down Shore, A little bit, yep, so we budget for that, so roughly $10,000 a year for that. And that's part of the maintenance that goes along with the roads. And if you look at the Street Logics report, I don't know if you've seen that or not, but that really gives you, you know, which roads you should be keying in on. And then it really comes down to Steve Beekert, myself, looking and identifying, you know, are they roads that take a lot of traffic? You know, how bad are they? And really, it's key that you address those in a timely manner, because if you wait and the crack's bad enough, the moisture gets below the road, you know, a cost for sealing is one thing, but if you wait and it does further damage to the road, the cost can escalate up to 7 times as much. So we need to be timely with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the O&M side? Operation maintenance, Councilor Carter.
It's not a question, it's more of a comment, and to speak with the potholes, it just reminded me when I worked for City Highway, you know, there'd be some downtime days where we'd go out and we'd look for different, you know, if roadways needed repairs or pothole repairs, they would come out. I don't know if they still do that.
Yeah.
Another thing is, I had recently, I think, I don't know, it was within the last 2 months, where I called the highway department, well, the mayor's office, highway department, whatever you call it.
Yep.
And it came to my attention from actually my neighbor, and that there was some work that was done, and it was kicking up, you know, with the traffic on Dame Street. And they came out that day, it was during a rainstorm,
Yep.
and plugged it up, and then on that Monday, they did it the right way and sealed it up. And that's an advantage for us having a highway department in the city. Growing up in the town, growing up in Quantic Bridge, something like that, and not to downplay anybody, but something like that could take weeks or months, you know, if my mother called on Midway Oval, as opposed to the city doing it like that, so
Right.
that's good.
Thank you. Yep, the guys really are the eyes and the ears, and with input from our citizens, you know, it's just perfect. Yep, that's great. Yep.
Okay, anything else on O&M? All right, let's look at capital.
Okay, the next piece is the capital budget, and we'll look at that, and the first thing that's on the top of the list is purchase a bucket truck. I can speak to that quickly. Okay. So the bucket truck that we'd like to replace is a 1988. It's 34 years old. We use that truck for emergency responses. Trees are down, a branch is down, we need to make safe. You know, we utilize the bucket truck. We also utilize that truck for tree work, arborist work. Okay, again, it's a 1988. Parts are becoming obsolete. We've had several repairs where we've had to actually fabricate the part to make the repair to the truck. Another key piece with that particular truck, because of the aerial lift and the hydraulics, it needs to have an annual inspection performed on it. If we fail that annual inspection, we'll have to take that truck out of service, and then potentially have to rent one if we can get one in the middle of a storm, et cetera, right? Repairs to date on that truck are over $15,000. Again, it's 34 years old. Mileage is fairly low on that, it's 30,000 miles, but if you think about that particular truck, you know, we go out to the job and we shut the truck off, you know, we're not driving it, but we leave it running for the hydraulics, so the hours are much, much greater. So that's where the wear and tear comes into that, while you're operating up on a boom. And I did a quick run through our spreadsheets there, so we've done 985 jobs particularly tied to that particular piece of vehicle. So it really is key. And again, it's 1988, it's 34 years old.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, go ahead.
okay. That's the truck. The next one is Brandegee Avenue, and that is a mill and repave. The cost for that, I funded $275,264. And that road there, we're gonna be milling off 3 inches of asphalt and replace it with an 1.5 inch wear course and an 1.5 inch leveling course and an 1.5 inch wear course. 2,100 tons on that repair. And we're going to, let's see, I'll also replace the basin tops and reset 8 manhole frames coming down that road. That road there, is, as far as we talked a little bit earlier about the Street Logics report, so Brandegee does qualify, so if you think about, the way that the metric goes for the Street Logics, a score of 0 to 39 is the road is beyond repair, it's ready for full depth reclamation. 40 to 69 is rehab, and that's where we want to look at right here, and that's where you'll find Brandegee coming into. Score of 70 to 84 is where we're doing preventative maintenance, like Paul was talking, crack filler, et cetera, that piece. And then anything from 85 to 100, the score is high enough where we'll defer it, okay? And for Brandegee, the scores, and it goes from road to road, so Sutton Place to Shenecosset was the highest, it was a 72. Hines to Morse was 64. Rainville to Lytton, 64. Lytton to Hines, 64. Morse to Sutton, 64, and Sutton Place to Shenecosset Road is a 74. So we'll be milling and repaving from Rainville to Shenecosset, okay? All right, questions on that? Okay.
Deputy Mayor Depot?
I just have a question about, Brandegee. So that runs in front of the new school that's there?
It does, the Thames River.
When we redo that, are we also gonna be able to look and analyze that traffic pattern? Because I know that I've had a few complaints about how the traffic is in front of the school and the way they put the lanes for turning into the school and all of that. So is that something that, when we go to do this, that we can review that to make sure that what they've got there is working before we put it back the way it is?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I know when the school first opened up, that the road was striped, as part of the project. And then we had received several calls from, residents saying that the buses were bottlenecking and traffic going in and coming out was not operating as it should. So we did partner with the police and, Chief was helpful with that. We did some restriping in there to correct that. I haven't heard many complaints as of yet. I know there's still a little bit of a bottleneck, but the root cause, what I believe to be, is where the throughput right in front of the school. So the buses will come in, they go a certain way, but the cars queue up to let children either off or to gather them up at the end of the day to get going. But there's been a pretty good response from the police to support the traffic flow. And again, I think the restriping of the lines out in front also helped. There was a couple of lanes that were, that had to be, the stop bar had to be placed in it correctly, and I believe things have gotten much better.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah,
know if-
the complaints I got maybe were
Yeah.
before the restriping, and I just haven't had a chance to
Yeah.
question it.
But I think it's not a bad idea for us, before we go in there,
Yeah,
for us to look at it, get the chief involved, maybe get Rick Norris from the town involved, because he was the engineer over
the project.
over the project, and make sure that we take a good look at this so that it is thoroughly evaluated, since
Yeah.
we're basically gonna take it down
Yeah.
and restripe it, so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we have the most optimum pattern, whatever that is.
Mhm.
And we'll need the right people's input
Yeah.
for that, but I think that's a good idea. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Are we gonna try to do that not while school is in session?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good questions.
Counselor Norris.
When you say, other funding source here, so when we're talking about paving, are you guessing maybe state road and highway money for that?
For where you?
For all these paving,
Oh, projects going forward?
Yep,
So those are in the queue, they've been in the queue, and we review them at the end of the year, readying to come into the budget and identify how we're gonna go forward with that. Some of it, maybe some, I know we had some bond money, correct, Mayor, that we had utilized for repairs earlier, but I think that bond money is no longer available.
Hold on a second, Ron, go ahead.
Sorry.
This is a historical which needs to be updated. It should be coming from capital, all those O's.
okay.
The O's were based on it being paid for when the town did the bonding.
Alright.
the way that that worked was that we would submit the invoices directly to the town and they would pay them. So it was outside of the budget process. It wasn't part of the budget. Once that bond fund has since, been done, they're now going back, like I think last year or the year before was, we put the paving projects back into the budget where we hadn't had them in there in a couple of years. So
Got it.
these just need to be updated for
Right.
that, for
So
that
this-
change of accounting.
So there's 2.8 over 2 years for the Shore Avenue seawall. We're looking at potentially bonding that.
Well, we're gonna get
Let's
into
speak
that
to
in just a minute.
Coming right up, yeah.
Okay.
Let's speak to that one.
So then, my last.
So in typical, the road, so let's talk about how roads have been paid for in the past. We've been all over the place between the town and the city, and do you put it in the CIP? Do you put it in the budget? Do you put it all together? What we finally decided that is the best thing is that even though you list it as a CIP, the whole thing gets approved by the town council, and then therefore, it does not go to the RTM, and the RTM doesn't cut it, because the interpretation by both the town and city attorneys of the special act is that the roads, the town of Groton is responsible for those monies that are necessary and proper for the repairing and making of roads that are town roads in the city of Groton. That one statement has caused, different gyrations over the different years. A previous council had decided that what they would do is they would bond money for roads and highways, and they did that, and then they started to run out, and then they got extended, they got the time extended because all the money wasn't expended. The current council's philosophy is to pay as you go, instead of waiting and kicking the can down the road, then you have to, the bond for it, they're gonna pay as we go along. The other thing that kind of forced that was the 2020 school bond was over $100 million. So, I think, I don't remember the exact number, but it was a huge number that they had to bond. So therefore, if you look at their, Ron, you may have to help me out with the proper term, but there's a debt to funding ratio,
They just have an internal debt policy, which has a couple different criterias.
right?
And I believe the one that they were up against was the bond payments as a percentage of the entire budget.
Right.
If I recall.
You're right, that's correct. And so that is one of the challenges that they have now with trying to, there's a lot of projects that the town and the town council and different people and the residents want, but if they have to be bonded, then the challenge runs in, do they have room based on that internal limits that they have on this? And then I'll get into a discussion, when we talk about the seawall in just a minute, I'll talk about the funding on it.
So if I think what I heard is, so we do not get any state funding for roads.
We get a small piece, which is the town aid road grant,
Okay,
which is a formula-based grant that comes every year. And we do deduct that piece of the
Got it.
grant from what the request to the town.
got it, all right.
But it's a general grant. It's not earmarked so much for this paving project or this. And to kind of go one step further, we have received grants. The Quantic Road project,
Yeah.
for example, is a
Is a
lot
lot
SIP
SIP.
grant.
Yeah.
through-
Right,
through
that's
Cobb.
where I was going, yeah.
So if there are grants out that we've tried to get them, this will be the second lots of project we've done. The drainage on Thames Street was also part of a lots of grant.
Right.
So if there's something out there and that they're willing to do a grant for it, that we'll try to get it.
And I'm sorry to keep you on the hot seat, but I'm done after this one question. So without seeing the totality of the debt service plan, is looking at fiscal year 28 and 27, you have replace, I don't have my glasses, F-150 pickup truck, and then you have the, why are they separated into different years versus putting them together to be consistent with what I see here as your debt service?
So looking at the fleet, right, I try to manage and select the vehicle each year, should it be that way.
Okay.
You may find that F-150 might have to be pulled forward a little
Okay,
bit.
yep, yep.
yeah. and going like that. So the same thing, you know, with the truck today, the bucket truck. You know,
Okay.
we'd pull that one forward because the condition is getting to the point where I was afraid we weren't gonna be able to pass the annual inspection.
Right.
And I would be without that vehicle and then be without be able to perform the
Right.
work.
Just to be trivial, how
Yeah.
old is that F-150, do you think?
That's a 2014 with,
Okay.
currently has 75,000 on it.
Okay.
Yep, so looking forward a couple more years,
Right.
maybe timed, right?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, continue on with CIP.
Okay, so the next one is the Shore Avenue Seawall, and you see this year asking for $1.4 million. And I have a little, I have a little bit of a slide deck, if I can get this to work. You know how to operate that? It's just, either that or it can go up with the down arrow. Yep, oh,
There we go.
thank you very much. So the wall was originally built in the late 1800s of mortar and stone. It's 360 foot long. The Shore Avenue Road right there is load-bearing on the wall. Okay. In the mid-1950s, it was, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So in the 1950s, it was faced with 4 inches of concrete, which was to prevent the soil which was washing through the wall continuously. And you'll see that as we go forward here with some of the pictures. There's currently deep cracking, concrete cracking on the face. Condition of the original stone wall, which is underneath the concrete, is unknown. Tide and waves have eroded the concrete face, and loose stones are now visible at ground level. And that's a big part of the concern right there, and you'll see then. Stormwater does drain through the wall. You'll see the pictures of that. And that's coming down from the old Avery Road, which is no longer in place. In part of the construction, we'll have to build a temporary cofferdam, and that will, keep the water back while we're constructing the brand-new wall. And then also we'll perform pre- and post-benthic monitoring, and that is really a sampling of the eelgrass and any animals, vertebrae that are in the soil or the mud. And the total cost for the project is $2,702,799.03. 3 cents, that is. Next slide. That's .03, yep, thank you, yeah, thanks. So,
Wow, that's really
yeah,
expensive.
I'm just gonna stand up here quickly, but this here is the Fort Griswold house. And that was torn down when we built the Fort Griswold Hotel. And you can see here that the wall is in place. And they're not large granite blocks. If you look at the wall up close in the pictures, you'll see that some small, pasture-found rocks that are in there. And then they had all the mortar that holding them together. And then in the 1950s, 1950s is where they did the facade. And, should I? Yeah, thank you. So in the 1950s is where we covered the face and the cap with the concrete, the 4-inch concrete, and that was to further prevent the soil from leaching through the stones. Okay, next slide, please. And here's a close-up of the wall in one of the locations. You can see the large cracking going on up through, and then if you would make note, though, at the base. Now, that is being, aggressively hit by the water, the tide, the waves, the ferries going up and down the river, and it's breaking away the concrete. In the next couple of slides, you'll see further show of that, please. Another close-up of the cracking, and, unless you get really down there and take a look at it, you'll see how severe it is, but some of these cracks, I can put my hand right into my wrist and reach around inside the voids. And some of the concrete, you can literally break it free and pull it out. Next. And here's one of the real close-ups of one of them. And again, this is one of the ones where I reached my hand, and you can wave right around. And you can actually, it's not shown really well with the camera, but you can actually see some of the old stones in there, and they're loose. Next slide, please. A little bit, again, close-up of the erosion of the concrete and how it's broken apart. And again, the concrete was from the 1950s, and it's as expected, it's end of life. Next slide. A little close-up, you can see underneath the concrete that we were just looking at, and one of the larger concrete, or the granite blocks that are underneath there. And I think one more slide, perhaps, or maybe 2. Another good shot of underneath, and some of these stones are so, like I made mention, some of them are like field-sized stones, and you can move them all around. So, and this is the last photo here. This is the outfall coming down from the old Avery Road, and this dumps into, this is one of our outfall monitoring points, but this dumps right into the Thames right there, okay? That should be it for the slides. So the cost for the project, as I made mention, you know, $2,702,799.03. We had, because of the price, we've decided to break that into 2 years. So fund half of it this year, and then fund the second part of it the following year. And you'll see that on the 2024, fiscal year 2024 budget. We have permits in place from DEEP. That permit is good for 5 years. We're already into that permit 18 months. We also have a permit with the Army Corps of Engineers. That permit is good till 2026. Questions at all?
So let's talk about funding.
Yep.
So I talked to John Burt, who's the town manager, about funding, and said, hey, do you want to go and look at this and maybe tie some of your projects together and go for a bond? Do you want to put it in whole? What do you want to do? And he said, well, let me think about it. So we got together over here. John came over. Greg Hanover, who is Bill's counterpart in the town, came over. Bill and I were here, and we talked about this. And so John said, have you reached out to Senator Murphy or to Congressman Courtney regarding getting funding from them on some of the federal money that might be out there? And I said, no, we haven't reached out to them yet. He said, well, let's reach out to them first before you come to me and say, hey, we need some more money on this. And I said, all right, not a problem. So we reached out to Congressman Courtney, and he came down. Actually, we reached out, and Iante Grant, who is one of his reps, said, well, we're putting together information right now. If you can get me a white paper by tomorrow, I can make sure it goes in to the package for Monday. So they did that, and I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, Congressman Courtney himself came down, toured the site, and talked to us about opportunities for federal funding. And Heidi is working with Julia McGrath, who is his funding rep and the grant person, to see if we can get additional funds from the feds or infrastructure money or any other funds that we could use on this to soften the local burden to the taxpayers regarding the payment of this. And so I talked to John, and I told him that what we were going to do this year is we're going to put in 1.4 this year and 1.4 for next year, hoping that we can get the funding obligated between now and then and come up with federal funds for this. So I don't know if that answers any of your questions that you were thinking about or haven't thought of yet, but that goes back to the funding source of the, for the seawall. Councilor Sheffield.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that we reach out as far as, you know, the infrastructure plan. I think that would probably be the best avenue. I think the next question would be, would we have to go through the state, through the governor? Would that money be referred to the governor and then again allocated to the municipalities from there? Or would that be directly allocated to us?
And
from?
those are the current conversations that we're having with Congressman Courtney's office.
Okay,
Right.
but that's an excellent idea. I think the federal money, while it's available, we should certainly look into
Well,
that first.
Absolutely, and this certainly fits from an infrastructure point of view. It fits from a resilience point of view. One of the things that we've identified is that this retaining wall is not tied to the bedrock. So my concern is if you have enough erosion over the years, is that the weight of the wall itself will cause the collapse
Yeah.
of the retaining wall. Now, you can get into, okay, so what? Well, the so what, we had issues with Thames Street when it collapsed and had to get money in order to support that. The additional challenge that we have here is that this road also has a forced sewer main in it, which is a 10-inch asbestos concrete pipe that, if it parts, will put sewage into the Long Island Sound to the tune of about 1,400 gallons a minute. Okay, now, so then people say, well, wait a minute, that means it's a utility project. It's not a utility project. Utilities are fine right now. The problem is, if my retaining wall fails, then everything, that retaining wall is holding up everything that is in the roadway. So there's two 5-inch gravity drain sewers, there's a force main sewer, and then there's a 10-inch force main potable water, drinking water, potable water that we have in that roadway as well. So that is no different than any other road that we have typically here in the city of Groton that contains the utilities in them.
Right.
So,
Right.
Councilor Norris.
Thank you. I can appreciate everyone, obviously, there's no suggestion, it's kind of obvious, you gotta seek out whatever funding you can get, may it be through the infrastructure bill and so forth. But I'm wondering now, what is the advantage of splitting it into 2 years funding instead of just putting it together and bonding that, regardless of what we're going to do in terms of seeking other funding? Because if we get the funding, don't we just release the bond or put it somewhere else, or obviously return it? So I was just wondering what the advantage is.
Do you have a comment? Because if not, I'll.
Go ahead, you can go.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ron's like, I don't want to answer that one.
Well, so here's my logic behind doing this. It's about making it more palatable to get it passed so that we can get it passed. John has already said he's not looking at doing a bond on it. I know that the current council is trying to minimize bonds, and if they're gonna do a bond, they wanna do a larger bond than, say, a 2.8 million. They wanna do larger than that. But John said he doesn't have any larger projects. Initially, he said, just go ahead and put it all in. And so we had looked at putting it all in, and then after I talked to him, and he said, well, did you go after federal funding? And we had not at that time. I said, all right, let's put it 1.4 this year, 1.4 next year, and that gives us time to find that federal funding.
Yeah.
To do this.
So please help me procedurally. So Groton City gets its bonding through the town?
No. But the town is responsible to fund roads and highways. So if it had to be a bond, it would be a town bond.
Okay, all right.
Can I add
Deputy
to that?
Mayor Depot.
As you said earlier, some of the counselors, including Counselor Norris, haven't been through this, but, so maybe it'd be best to explain after this, what happens to this budget,
Okay,
because I think that he doesn't know that.
okay, no, understand, because one of the questions you may ask is, why are we doing police and road and highway tonight, and we're doing everything else later on? That will be answered by Deputy Mayor Depot's request.
I get, because the operating budget, I was just trying to question the bonding of city projects, if it's connected to roads, is that still go through the town? And I guess the answer is yes.
So, let me separate this.
Sorry.
Well, if it's associated with sanitation, if it would be a bonding project, it would be a city bonding issue. Any other bonding projects associated with the city are typical city issues, and those, and including utility projects, right? Now, because of the special act and because the town is responsible for the money for the roads and highways, then they would have to decide how they want to fund this. the council could say, you know what, go ahead and put the 2.8 in this year, and we'll just take it, but it depends on, there's a couple things that are going on right now. One is the revow and what that has done, and what will that do to the mill rate. The other thing is what other spending and what other projects does the town have now that in essence is competing against this funding and bonding? Does that kind
Yes,
of
it does.
answer?
Yep.
Ron, am I accurate in that explanation, or am I off center?
No, you're accurate. And the biggest thing, like you said, is that we provide when we go to the town, which I think will be in the request from the deputy, requesting pretty much that they fund this entire budget, which includes operating and maintenance and the capital piece of it. So essentially, like the mayor said, if they decide that they don't want a bond, this is actually goes all, if approved, would be all as part of your current the town's taxes in the current year.
Yeah, Councilor Sheffield.
If the town, through John Burt, if he's giving us the green light, so to speak, to ask the federal government for the money, I would certainly recommend to do the whole thing at once, to get it all out of the way, so we wouldn't need to split it in two and just fund the whole project.
So,
It
so
would-
I guess let's take a step back. I understand what you're saying. If we get federal funding, absolutely 100%, we will fund the entire project through that. Right now, we're requesting the funding from the town while we're looking at those other avenues. If we don't receive any federal funding, the hope is that it'll be funded through the town's budget process. And then if hopefully we do get federal funding for it, then that money, in theory, we wouldn't need to request from the town.
And getting back to that, if John Burt is recommending us to go to the federal government first, you would think that's going to be the primary option if that's what he wants to do, so we don't have to go back to the town for money, to provide the budget and have it split up into two. If we can get all the federal money, if he's recommending that first, we won't have to worry about having it budgeted through the town at all.
Yeah, but if we can get, so here's the deal, I could sit and wait, and I got nothing in this hand, and I'm waiting on this hand, or I could put this in for 1.4 mil now and look for the full funding or partial funding and get the town obligated to pay for this so that we can either start this year or next year.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense? Counselor Carter, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Do you see where I'm going with that?
I know.
Yeah,
Well, I don't want you to explain it to him. If you have an opinion, you can tell me, but don't.
Well, yeah.
Are you good with that explanation, what
Yeah,
I just said?
Yep, I understand the explanation, but I think if John Burt is encouraging us to go
John
that
Burt
route.
he asked the question, did you talk to Murphy or Courtney? And the answer was no. So that prompted me to reach out to Murphy and Courtney.
Absolutely,
And I have what I have.
I think hopefully we push on that strongly, because if that option's available to us and we could get that money, we won't have to go to the town for any of it. So that's the
Ron?
best part.
The bigger thing is we have a timing issue right now, is that this budget's due to be approved by this council, whatever the decision for the budget is, the first meeting of February, and then it's due to the town council by the close of business, February 28th, I believe it is, the Monday.
Yeah.
So it's a timing issue of the approval. So if we had another 3 months before this budget was approved, it would give us that more time to find the federal funding potentially. But just because of a timing, if say that we don't receive any federal, now we're another whole year behind without any request. So I think that's more answer the questions from a
Right.
timing standpoint.
And to follow up, we can certainly, if we get that money, and let's say it's been allocated by the town, we can reimburse back if we get the federal money, and I think that would be great also, as
Correct.
long as we do that.
Right.
Because then, it takes the tax burden off of us.
Got it. Counselor Carter,
Thanks.
you have the floor.
So I get the timing, and I think I get where you were going. I'm not gonna speak on it because I don't know. but I think it has, I mean, to me, it would have more to do with urgency, not urgency to get this approved, but how urgent or how quick do we need the seawall done? I mean, by cutting it up, it could appear that that's something that doesn't need to be done ASAP. But if we go to the federal government and say we need this done, and we give them this is what it is, it would think, I mean, and again, this is just me thinking, you know, and even with the other council and the RTM, you know, if we break it up, it's like, okay, well, how, is this a real sense of urgency, you know? You said the last time they did something was 1950, correct?
That they put this
So we're,
facade on it.
I mean, we're like several years behind, you know, so I guess my question would be, for starters, like why now? Like what prohibited us from doing this, say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? I know the answer would probably be, okay, we needed Thames Street and other things done, you know, which is probably the answer, but like why now? And my other thing is, I also think that during big projects like this, you know, I think it would be almost automatic that a government, that we would try to seek out other financing if possible. I don't think John Burt should have had to tell us to go to the government. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out there, you know.
Okay, it is the town's responsibility to pay for the roads. That is why I went to the town. John is looking for alternative ways, and we don't always have federal funds that are out there. Now with the infrastructure plan and those kind of things, those are out there, but that's why I went to the way that the process is set up, which is you go to the town. The answer as to why now, Ron, this was looked at the end of, I think it just got started at the end of Marion's, right? Somewhere along in there?
The engineering and the design work of redoing that, correct.
So it took us a while to get the engineering and design work, and then I was working with Tim, the previous, Tim Ummers, the previous department head, in order to get this together. So, and the state come back and they said, okay, you need to do this eelgrass study. And that took several months in order to go. So it's not like we have delayed this intentionally and just said, okay, I think we'll wait for a rainy day. We have been pushing on this and doing the steps that we need to get the permit from the Army Corps, get the permit from the DEP. So now I wanted to push this and move this forward and get this going, and that's why I had the meeting with John Burt and Greg Hanover, so that we could actually move this forward in earnest in order to get this done. Now, the other question you have is, we're gonna put out an RFP to get somebody to evaluate the current status of this wall. And the reason I wanna know that is I think this needs to be done. What I don't know is is it in danger of imminent collapse or not? If that's the case, I will stop either all traffic or all but local traffic to minimize the wear and tear in the road and the impact on top of the road, which puts pressure on the walls. And then I would also, depending on how bad it is, depending on what comes back from the study, put out a caution tape and barrier tape and not let anybody down there on the beach, part of it. Because what we don't want is, we don't want it to suddenly collapse and then boom, somebody gets hurt or killed or something like that, injured or killed. I don't think it's that imminent, but I do think that if we get, 2 or 3 Hurricane Sandys, and we know that with the Atlantic conveyor being slowed down like it is, that the duration and intensity of storms is increasing. And so that's my concern, and we keep getting that washout from underneath.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thanks, that answered my question, and that's what I was saying, and that would actually make more sense, to break it up if we can, because
Sure.
if it wasn't imminent, that would make sense, you know?
Right.
But if it was something I needed to do ASAP, you know, just from somebody looking, you know, like, why would they break it up in two? But you answered the question, so that makes a lot
Okay,
of sense.
all right, so I got your question. Counselor Norris?
Thank you. That absolutely answered the question. But I'm wondering, how long would the project take from scratch to finish, if you have an idea?
I would guess 6 to 9 months,
Okay.
probably to get all that done. Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I
Yep.
do think it was projected around 6 to 9 months
Yep.
on that. And one of the
Big
things we're gonna have to do is, and I know, Bill said this, but we're gonna have to put in basically a retaining wall.
Yeah, yeah,
And then that keeps the water out so they can go in there and do their work.
right.
And they're not subject to tidal issues and getting wet and, you know, all those kinds of things. So,
Our work, is that our guys doing the work?
no,
no,
this would be a
no.
contractor.
Contract it
Okay,
out,
I
yeah,
was just-
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this is not us. No. This is way
I
beyond
think
our.
we used to do the work back in the 50s,
Well,
right?
Yeah.
absolutely, but,
Yeah.
all right, are there any other questions on this? Because I do want to get through this, because we do have another budget, and we have other items on the agenda. Deputy Mayor Depot.
I guess my question is more actually about both of these budgets, but are you going to ask for council volunteers for the 3-on-3
So-
committee tonight?
Yeah, we haven't got there yet. So let me, hold on, let me let Bill finish, or, sorry, Director Robarge, finish the presentation on CIP, and then I need to answer the question on 3-on-3, and then on the process from here, to let people know. Thank you. Go ahead. Do you have one last item on there, right?
Okay, very good. So we'll close that out with the seawall. The next topic is Jupiter Point Road drainage. That's in regards to stormwater draining down at the end of Pine Island Road, where it comes around with Jupiter Point. There's an inability right now for stormwater to drain off the road. And what I mean by that is the drain pipe goes out and it hits the sound. The elevation is almost the same as the pipe that comes in. So if the tide's in or I'm getting surge from the sound, that water from the sound is literally infiltrating our stormwater pipe out to the catch basins, and actually you'll see it raising out on the roads. So the second part of that is there's a little bridge, a little culvert right out there where there's 2 head walls with concrete reinforced pipe underneath them. There's 2 24-inch pipes under them. One of the pipes has already failed because of the ocean water coming up in, I believe, and going through and around that pipe. And so both of the head walls and the concrete reinforced pipe needs to get replaced. So this money is to fund the study, analysis, and design for that replacement for the culvert and the pipe and the head walls, as well as to help with the determination for our elevation and to look at the system as a whole. Okay, and the request for that is $100,000 for that piece right now.
And if you look at our, if you've been following Facebook and some of the posts on the economic development, you'll know that we're doing a resiliency study now. We have a study out with SLR, and they're doing this study on things for resiliency. Resiliency is 2 things. One, it addresses the projected sea level rise of 20 inches in 30 years. The other part of that is, how do you recover from a storm? How quickly can you recover to get back to normal? And part of this, if you go back to Jupiter Point, if you look at the last storm we had, that area down there in Jupiter Point gets flooded routinely, as does some of Shore Ave, particularly Shore Ave where South Prospect is. That ends up being a low point and a drain. We're gonna be looking at that as well. But the Jupiter Point drainage here is something that we're looking at to try to correct in the next couple of years. And we are gonna be spending more time and effort looking at our areas where coastal flooding is currently an issue and will only get exacerbated by the future projections of sea level rise and things like that. So, questions or comments on that? Okay. Do you have anything else?
I'm set.
Okay. So, what are next steps? I will get a motion to move this to the mayor and the council meeting of February 7th. Once that gets approved by this council, I will then send it to John Burt. John Burt will put it in. Basically, all he does is he just forwards it to his council. It then becomes part of their budget that they look at. They will go through it and make recommendations, but then they will meet with us and we will go through the budget. Probably, I don't know if they'll go line item by line item or how this council will do it, but then we basically present our budget and defend our budgets. The deputy mayor made a comment about the 3 and 3. There is a section in our charter that talks about there will be a meeting between 3 of our counselors and 3 of their counselors, where basically they talk about the road and highway budget and discuss the way ahead. And sometimes that meeting has been fruitful and sometimes it has not been. There have been times that there's been an agreement from that meeting, and then when it goes with the department head, the finance director, and I go to the council, that they accept the results of that meeting, and sometimes they just put it back in and say, yep, we realized we had a meeting, these guys recommended this, but we're gonna go ahead and ask questions and put it to the entire body for this meeting. There is no similar meeting, no 3-on-3 meeting for the police budget. And the requirement from the special act says that they'll fund 100% of it. Whatever they fund is what they fund. And that's it. Did that cover?
Just
Mayor Depot.
to clarify, so, but the point of the 3-on-3 is for each council sends 3 representatives from their council so that you can kind of suss out and get any questions that they have. And then those counselors from the town council go back and say, we agree, or we discuss these items, and they can kind of give their cohorts a summary so that we don't have to do it as a whole big council at their big council meeting. It's kind of the point is to make it a little easier on the council as a whole and get us approved.
That's correct. Then, once the town council makes their recommendations, then it goes to the RTM. This budget, the road and highway budget, does not, the RTM has to vote on it, although sometimes they're uncomfortable with that. They still have to vote on it and basically approve it as a formality. And then we will go to the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting. Actually, we go to the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting for the police. We also go to Roads and Highways Subcommittee meeting for this, even though they have no action. And then once those 2 groups report out, and then John Burt will be there, I will be there, we'll bring the department head and the finance director there, and then we present to the RTM as a whole and answer their questions and then defend this to them. So that's the budget process for roads and highways and for the police budget. They pay for, traditionally, they pay for half the police budget minus the chief's salary. So does that answer the question? Did that address what you want me to address? Okay. Are there any other questions on the road and highway budget? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 7 February.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Okay? Thank you, Bill. Thanks, Bill. All right, Chief, you're up. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councilors. Mayor, I appreciate the opportunity to present to you a budget that I feel would allow me to effectively run the City of Groton Police Department. This budget takes into consideration contractual obligations such as step increases, general insurance, benefits, medical insurance, pensions, unfunded mandates put in place by House Bill 6004, along with uncontrollable cost increases to items affected by inflation. Also within this budget, you'll have noticed 2 CIP items. One is contractual, that being the bulletproof vest for our officers. We want to keep them safe, and the vests themselves have a life use date, and once the specified date has been reached, the vests need to be replaced. The second item is a request for a new patrol vehicle and 1 unmarked detective vehicle. At the present time, we have 2 2011 Crown Vics in our fleet. These vehicles are no longer in production through Ford, and the parts are getting harder to locate. And once you do locate them, the prices have increased in order to fix them. We also have 1 unmarked Ford Taurus, a detective car, we call it an unmarked, that I would like to replace, and it presently has a rust hole in the lower left kick plate. That is a 2006 vehicle. So with your permission, I'd like to address the City Council.
Okay, please.
Okay, good evening. Tonight I present to you my first budget for consideration. We continue to live in difficult times, as we all know, with the continuing pandemic and inflation that affects fixed costs. I present to you, as previous chiefs have, a fully loaded budget, which shows all costs to run the department, from retirement, insurance, and fleet costs included. Also, like previous chiefs, I will hold the line on operational increases. Unlike previous chiefs, I am impacted by inflation, fuel cost, and higher costs for insurance and retirement. With an inflation rate of nearly 7%, I have kept my overall cost below that. Before you have a budget with an overall increase of 5.7%, a total increase of $319,000. In recent years, we've been able to improve functionality of our department by updating the radio system, body cameras, improving emergency operations center, and many other items. This was all done with minimal cost to the taxpayers by use of grants. I'm pleased to announce that I'm currently expanding our camera program utilizing a JAG grant, with the data feed going directly into our dispatch center. This is going from a planning to implementation stage. We have also completed our locker room upgrade, which was approved last year, and providing an equal locker room accommodations to female officers, and it has been well received by our personnel. You want to flip through like the highway did? Is
Sure.
that the way you want to do that, sir?
Yep, however you want to present it, Chief. Whatever you think the best way is. And then we'll open up to questions from the council.
Okay. One of the largest increases you'll see is under training. You see that it went up 15.38%, the increase of $2,000. With that, everything obviously is going up in price. We now have to pay for several classes to attend the Connecticut Post Academy. We have to get recertified every 3 years, which is through LEC. We also attend classes for certification through Post, which is our police academy up in Meriden, Connecticut. Due to issues that they have, we now have to pay for classes to go there. The minimal fee, but we do have to pay for those. We also have to do, every time we have a supervisor sergeant promotion, we have to send them to supervisory school, because there are different obvious responsibilities for them to obtain and hold accreditation for that. Which brings me to the accreditation process, where we are a accredited agency. We have been reaccredited, and we're going through reaccreditation again in 2 months. So those increases, our EMR, we are R1 responders, so we have to be recertified medically, which also takes up our costs, we go to mid-management training. So all the increases for all our funding and registration and everything for our training has gone up. Let's see, the city has contractual obligation. Let's go down to educational stipend, college incentive, which is just below, like 4 lines below. That's a 5.1%, a $1,500 increase. We have a contractual obligation to pay the education bonus to officers who have earned a minimum of 30 credits. So in the contract, if you have 30 credits, you get a certain amount of money. If you get an associate's, you get more. That's way incentive to get them educated. A bachelor's, you get more, master's, and so forth. We have officers, I believe we're up to 4 officers now that have gotten their master's degree, and we have more that are going through college now to get their other degrees. The big one that you may see is right below that, went up 140%. That, if you look to the left, the previous budget was 22, in 2022 was, I think they had 5,000 in there. Our contract says that it'll have $12,000 in there. So that is for them to take the classes. So an officer wants to take a law enforcement related, supervisory related, college credit, something in the field, law enforcement, we have a contractual obligation to pay up to $12,000 for those classes. Why it wasn't in there in the past, I'm not sure, but it says 12,000 in there, I'm putting 12,000 in there, allocated. If you go down, safety incentive went up 5%. That's a program we have citywide for, if you do not call out sick, I believe it is, or injured or something to that effect, you gain points, and with those points, you can get incentives for coming to work. Vehicle maintenance went up 5.88%. We have somewhat of an aging fleet. We were, I believe it was 2019 or 2020, we were cut a vehicle. So now we had to skip a year from gaining a vehicle. We have 9 vehicles in the fleet. 2 of them are 2011s, the Crown Vics, and the others are newer SUVs with the, when I say newer, it's 15, 16, 17s. So we're looking, so the repairs are getting costly on that because of the aging of the fleet. The general insurance is at 12.02, so it went up $10,000. That's for our HB 6004 liability insurance. Obviously, we have to have a higher insurance level. I wish I knew the exact level that each officer was covered for. I do not know that, but it did go up. Let's go to page 2. The data processing. Data processing is all our contracts that we have for our computer system, our MDT system, our body cam maintenance fees, our state uniform unfunded mandate system, our mobile interface upgrades, our collect system, copy machines, all of that office internal stuff has gone up. We have made significant upgrades in our IT department, in our IT interface, which then requires us to update other things, and those are going up in cost. But if the update in the IT department gives us efficiency, and it helps us maintain and absorb some of the necessary costs. You'll see, let's see, the pension. The pension was a increase to maintain funding responsibility of the account. I'll let Ron, Mr. Uhas answer that if he wishes.
So the funding is based on the reports from our actuary, and we get an actuarially determined employer contribution, which is our contribution, meaning the city's contribution into the pension fund based on their report. Last year, we made some changes to the valuation, which came in after the budget was already submitted to the town, and we changed some of our assumptions in that to be more conservative and make it more realistic. We bringing the interest rate down, which we've been doing historically over the last few years. There was a mortality table change and a couple of other things. So last year, so it looks like a really significant increase in this year's budget, but it was really because it was under budgeted in the previous year, and it's catching it up. So that's why there's a big increase in this year's pension.
So the general support fund section there was a total of 6.66%, and that was mostly from the general insurance, the pension, and the health care. Let's see, we go down, again, the contractual obligations down to the crime prevention and patrol. It went up 7.3%. That was obviously contractual obligations that we have to take care of as far as pay raises and step increases. We have the two lines down, the shift differential. If you work a second shift or a midnight shift, you get a certain percentage more than the day shift because it's an odd hours. Second shift used to be 50, I think it was 50 cents. Midnights was a 75. It was in the contract negotiated that it'll be 75 cents period for both shifts. So it didn't go up on midnights, however, it did go up on second shift. Let's see, crime prevention. That went up. Let's see, part of that was the general, what's that, 7,800 per officer, the EMR, and yes, as an EMR, R1, there's a stipend they get for having those credentials. So that went up. Clothing allowance, you'll see that it's a 4.08. With the issue with that is every year you get a certain amount of dollars for clothing allowance. I believe it's $900. However, the contract allows them to roll it over up for 2 years, which goes up to $1,700. So we have to adjust for that. Every year will be different. Some will be less, some will be more. It depends on how much is rolled over. Cost of fuel and repairs for the boat, that went up. We used to have only $2,000 into the boat fund. The Marine Division, we are going to be using the Marine Division a lot more because the engines repairs that we had to do and the fuel system that we have repaired, we will now be able to utilize it more often, get out there with the Coast Guard and do all the functions that they have with them. We do see at the very bottom, the crossing guard, school crossing guard, with, this is new, with the addition of the Thames River Magnet School, the elementary school that we have here, we now have to have a crossing guard for the children that cross the street. We did not have a elementary school prior to this for several years. So now that we do have one, we need to provide a crossing guard, make sure they get across the street safely. That's all I have, Mayor. Any
Okay.
questions?
Thank you. Questions from the council?
Do what I can to answer.
Deputy Mayor Depot.
Under training, this is, well,
Mhm.
I know that they passed the state passed a police reform bill.
Yes.
Are we able to, so I think that bill requires some different training or additional training for officers. Is there any funding, because it's essentially an unfunded mandate,
Correct. All unfunded mandates.
which is fun. So are there any funding sources, like state funding sources, that might be able to help us? Have we looked at that at all for the budget? Because that's, I'm guessing, also part of the reason why your training budget has gone up, because you have to have officers attend extra classes and stuff.
Right. What they have adjusted was the Law Enforcement Council, LEC, which is in charge of training the local officers. Every 3 years, we have to get recertified. And they have picked up a lot of those mandated classes and education and stuff like that. Some of the biggest one is we send our officers to either the Post Academy or to Roger Williams University when they become a supervisor. So that's because we want them to be well-educated, informed of what their responsibilities are, because it is different from a regular patrol officer, their responsibilities, and it protects them. We do not want to set them, or actually set any officer up for failure. So we want them well-educated.
That's all.
Any other questions or comments on the police budget? Councilor Norris?
Chief, working backwards in your packet.
Yes, sir.
So the first question is, you mentioned the crossing guard. Can you explain this to me? Because when it was a middle school, because I drive up that street every morning, there was a crossing guard.
No, what we have, sorry, I don't mean to say.
No,
say
that's all right. That's okay.
Okay, I don't want to say no
No,
to you,
that's all
but
right. I
let
hear it
me,
every day, don't worry about it.
let me freeze it. What we do have is a special traffic officer,
Okay,
and what she does is she controls the traffic in front of the middle school. So we allow Pfizer comes in early in the morning, which is usually the time that the school comes in and out.
Yeah.
And then Pfizer releases their traffic the same time the school buses come in and out. So our special traffic officer, you'll see her at one end of the road to get the vehicles through and get the buses in and out in a timely fashion.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon, she'll move to the other end.
And her function is traffic, to get
Okay.
traffic flow and to control the traffic flow and to get people in and out and to avoid congestion. That's what her function is.
okay.
And Chief, go
The
ahead.
the traffic officer worries about the traffic, the school crossing guard worries about the children.
Got it.
So she doesn't, because she goes back and forth to opposite ends, and unfortunately, hopefully she's feeling better, she got in a car accident, we hope she's okay. So we have one dedicated straight for the kids.
All right, got it. She was very entertaining.
Now, you are correct in that we did not have a crossing guard when it was a middle school, and the logic behind that is that middle schoolers were old enough to be able to negotiate crosswalks and those kind of things, whereas it is now pre-K to 5, right? I think
Yeah,
is
pre-K to 5.
what Thames River Magnet is.
Yep,
So that's why there was an additional request for us to do that, and we decided to do that to protect our kids.
got it. Thank you. The marine operations that I'm seeing here, it says salary overtime.
Yes, sir. We do not, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We do not have, we have three officers that are dedicated captains. And we have probably 6, I believe, last time I checked, 5 to 6 officers that are to the status of deck mates or deck hands.
Yeah.
So we have 3 officers that are allowed to utilize the boat, captain it, drive it. And then what happens is we'll put them out like Memorial Day. So that's an overtime shift. We have to take them off their patrol
Yeah.
and put them on there and then fill that spot with other officers.
Got it.
And we didn't have the fireworks the last couple of years, but we usually do that. We want them on there the Memorial Day and Labor Day, when the boating starts and when the boating ends. And then we will have, if they have a function that the Coast Guard wants it to do, like a submarine coming in or something to that effect, that they request our presence, then we will do that. We
Okay.
put the boat in the water at the yacht club, Shinnecock Yacht Club, so it's always there. And if there's an emergency that we have to respond to, it's for funding for the overtime that we have to call them in.
Okay, but you don't have an officer assigned to be out on the boat, on the water, like every day?
We have
It's-
not lately, no,
Okay,
sir.
all right, thank
Not in
you.
years.
And 2 last questions, I'm sorry. So the cruiser, is that part of the town vehicle replacement program? Or is it, we kind of have our own and we request through the town as this budget to replace a vehicle?
Correct. We have our own, and we, if you, you have the copy of the SIP on here, Mayor?
No, that's
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Every year we plot out.
Okay,
So
got
every year, we request a cruiser and an unmarked. And then the next year, we just do an unmarked. And then
Got
we
it.
do a cruiser and an unmarked. That way we keep our fleet, because we have 8 cars.
Yeah.
By the time we get this one, and then we replace it
Yeah, you're going back
8,
to-
17,
Yeah.
14 years by the time this one. I
Right.
mean, we've got 2003s and 2006s in our
Got it.
fleet right now.
Thank you. The last question I have is, based on what you hear with crime on a swift uptick lately, have we seen any of that going on here in the city?
Well, we are investigating an active incident down on Bridge Street where an individual was the victim of a gunshot and he had passed away. That has, those kinds of incidents, as far as shootings have gone up, no,
Okay, good.
we have not. It's been pretty steady,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments on the police budget? Okay, then I'd like to have a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 7 February.
So move.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion second, further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay, thank you, chief.
Thank you.
You wanna,
So I will leave this up to the council as to how much detail or non-detail we want to go into, and I'll just kind of give you a quick overview. On your desk today was the city's, budget to actual for the 6-month mark. As you can see, there's nobody using 50% halfway through the year, with the exception of the park and rec. Based on the seasonal activity, everybody's in line. So there's really nothing out of the ordinary there. So I just wanted to say that was there.
okay,
And then we have the Groton utility financials. If we want to go through them, we can go through them. There's nothing out of the ordinary that you haven't seen in the previous months. The water is under budget based on the delay of that project with the depreciation and the loan repayments. And then the sewer, we saw the decrease in the revenue in the industrial based on the deducts. It's pretty much the same story that we've been seeing on a monthly basis. So there's nothing to jump out.
but if
Again,
you look at,
somebody-
if you look at those budgets and you have any questions, please give us a call and
Absolutely.
we'll make sure that somebody addresses them. Okay, so that's everything on the committee of the whole, with the exception of the executive session. I'd like to get a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-206 Alpha to discuss personnel, fire department to include council, the chief, and chief, who do we have? Jim Gardner. And include Jim Gardner.
Tim?
Tim, sorry, I'll meet you in a minute. Tim Gardner made a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We are now in the executive session. We'll go into we're in executive session. We will get people to evacuate. Once we're done, we'll come back into regular session, we'll adjourn, and then we'll go into I'll go get the clerk, and we'll go into our